Welcome to the Veganuary podcast, the podcast that helps you to try a vegan diet. It's stuffed full of hints and tips for anyone who wants to eat more plants.
Veganuary 2025 is proudly sponsored by our international sponsor, The Vegetarian Butcher. You can check them out and see more info about Veganuary's other sponsors in the episode description.
Good to see you again, Wendy. I'm going straight in with whether you had something that was very, very vegan happen to you this week, or the opposite, very, very unvegan.
Yeah, I would say I have a very vegan moment. So I try to avoid doing a lot of Black Friday shopping and support Small Business Saturday instead. But I will say I broke down for two really good deals this year. One was on some vegan supplements and protein powders. So I have a big box of B12 and omegas coming. Not the splurgiest thing in the world, but an important thing that I got at a nice price. And then I also just received this in the mail, which is a bag of the Lindt oat milk chocolate truffles, which I order myself every Christmas and which are so nice.
I don't know if I've ever had those. I wonder if you can get those in the UK.
I know that you can't because someone was just talking about it in our Teams chat the other day, how they wish they could get them in the UK. So we'll have to do a snack exchange.
Yeah. Well, I did something that was not, I consumed something that was not vegan this week, but I want to explain myself. So, as you know, Wendy, I play in a band, and we're a small, not very well known band, and we play a lot of like funny, quirky little venues. Like we play a lot of village halls, for instance, in villages that are kind of in the middle of nowhere. And we went to play this particular village hall that is run, the music that they put on there is run by a group of volunteers, a kind of army of volunteers. There are about 30 of them, all, I would say, of a certain age, probably retired. And when we arrived, they were asking us if we wanted tea and coffee, and they were saying that they'd, put a lot of effort into preparing us a meal that was vegan, because I'm not the only vegan in the band. I really appreciated their the kind of effort and enthusiasm they were putting into something that I think it was clear that was unusual. Anyway, so I went over to get a cup of tea from them, and they said, we've got vegan milk here for you. And it was not plant-based milk, it was lactose-free milk. And I just felt I couldn't say, just really felt that I couldn't say, actually, that isn't suitable for vegans at all. So I just had it, I just drank it, I just sucked it up. And I think that was probably the right thing to do. Do you?
I do. Yeah. I've been in similar situations before where someone's putting in a real effort and maybe doesn't quite hit the mark. Yeah. And I think, we don't want to perpetuate the idea that it's very difficult to be vegan.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes if in those moments, if you get extremely nitpicky or, make the chef go back to the kitchen to read the ingredient label on something, people walk away and think, what a horrible pain to be a plant-based person. And that's not what we want to perpetuate. We want people to think that it's very doable. And so I think you made the right move.
Good, thanks. I feel absolved. We'd love to hear from you, our listeners, if you've done something that's really cliche vegan, or if you've had a kind of a moment where you've done something that wasn't very vegan and with hilarious consequences, perhaps. We'd love to hear from you. So you can email us at podcast@veganuary.com. Wendy, you spoke to Maggie Baird, and her interview is coming up shortly. And she's quite inspirational. I think you told me afterwards you found it a really inspiring chat. And also, she is the mother of a very famous vegan in Billie, Eilish. And it got me thinking about who are our favourite vegans in the public eye. So I wonder, who's your favourite vegan?
Oh, it's a really good question. And there's so many public-facing vegans that I really admire. And honestly, Billie is one of them. And Maggie, I think they're just movers and shakers. They walk the walk. They do events around the world that focus on climate and veganism. I mean, they're just incredible. I also am a sucker for an unlikely vegan. So a lot of folks that you just think don't fit the typical mold. An example that comes to mind is Patrick Buboumian, who's one of the strongest men on earth, and who's vegan and loud and proud about it. I just think he's such a cool role model. What about you? Do you have a favorite vegan?
Yes, similar to you, I always like someone who is unexpectedly plant-based, and there is a grime sort of hip-hop artist here in the UK called JME who's plant-based, and he talks about it, and it's in some of his lyrics. He's a great musician as well. So that was one of my, and then the other person that came to mind for me was Bimini from Drag Race UK, because I love them, and I'm a big Drag Race fan, as you know, because I talk about it all the time. And when Bimini came in, had her entrance into the workroom, the first thing that she said was, "I'm vegan." And I think she makes it really fun and non-threatening and accessible. And she's really smart. She speaks very eloquently about it as well, which I think is great. Hey, Wendy, it was your birthday recently and you did something quite cold. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I did. So I decided to host a little birthday fundraiser on Instagram. I turned 38 last week, and it was also my 5-year anniversary with Veganuary. So I set a little bit of an ambitious goal of raising $1,000 for Veganuary through my Instagram channel, which, by the way, I am not an influencer. I do not have a lot of followers, so this is really asking friends and family to pitch in. And I knew it was a bit of a reach, so I wanted to raise the stakes a bit and incentivize folks to donate. So I live in upstate New York. It's already quite wintry here. It's about 40 degrees, which is like 7 Celsius. And I decided if I hit my target, I would jump into the lake and do a polar bear dip on my birthday. And we got there. We hit 1,000. And so I did do a jump in the lake. It was so cold that I had my car parked right next to the shore with the heat cranked up. So I got in, I got out, I jumped in the car and dried off. And it was surprisingly refreshing and invigorating. Are
you an experienced cold water person?
Oh no, I hate the cold. I would be in a sauna before an ice bath any day of the week.
Yes, and it's great. It's a great way to support Veganuary because we are a charity, we are a non-profit, and so donations really help us do our work. And so, if you don't necessarily feel you have the means to donate yourselves, then starting a fundraiser on Facebook or on Instagram or on Just Giving or any of those, especially if you're really taking on a plant-based diet as a kind of challenge for a month, if you're kind of seeing it as a challenge for yourself, it could be a great thing to get sponsored for. So why not consider it? Wendy, because of the time difference between the UK and the US, I wasn't able to attend this interview with Maggie, so I'm going to hand over to you now.
I'm so excited to share my interview with Maggie with you. She was just absolutely phenomenal to talk to, completely inspiring. Maggie's a climate activist and the mother of Grammy-Award-winning artists Billie, Eilish, and Finneas. She's a co-producer of the Climate Summit that features youth activists from around the world. And in 2020, she founded Support and Feed, which is a U.S. nonprofit focused on developing innovative, intersectional strategies to ensure underserved communities have access to nourishing, plant-based food.
Awesome. Let's have a listen.
So we always like to start off with a fun one. What is your dream vegan meal?
I feel like I get asked this a lot, and I think because I'm a cook, I don't sort of dream of some meal I've had sometime that I can never have again. I really love I love vegetables, honestly, like beautifully prepared vegetables. And some tofu and then maybe I guess if there's a potato among them, is sort of a perfect meal. It's not that extravagant, but it appeals to me always.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would argue with you on the tofu and potatoes as total staple foods.
Tofu and potatoes. I feel like it's honestly one of my longest term food recipes. It's not a recipe. It's like baked potato, tofu, and like tofu with tamari and green beans. That's like an old standard from, the 1970s. I've been making that and I still love it.
Yeah, well, no, and I can tell, you've been plant-based for a long time because I feel like the OG plant-based foods were the tamari and nutritional yeast on just about everything, right?
They're still great. They're still awesome.
Absolutely.
A little miso. I know it is kind of funny when you think of the staples in a plant-based kitchen in the late 70s, and now obviously there's this wide array of choices, but those are definitely on the staples list still.
Yeah, mine too. So tell us a little bit about your diet before you went vegan. What kind of food did you eat when you were growing up?
Well, I grew up in Western Colorado. My father hunted and fished. I never ate a fish in my life, though. I would not eat it. I think when you grow up with someone who is a hunter or fisherman, like you probably either go one of two ways. You either go like, yeah, this is normal and I accept this, or whoa, not participating in this. And I loved my dad. I actually loved to be with him in the boat, just hanging out and talking. He mostly threw his fish back, actually. But I never wanted to eat meat ever in my life. And my brothers were the same. Kind of fascinating. I wish there was research on that, on people who sort of instinctively don't want to eat meat. So I never really I would not say that meat was the center of my diet growing up because I didn't like it. But on the other hand, it was kind of one of the main things that there was to eat. And I wouldn't use the word forced, but I was coerced into eating it. A lot of canned food, a lot of canned vegetables. Funnily, I grew up in Western Colorado where you think, oh, fresh produce, but I remember mostly canned food and, the classic like iceberg lettuce salad and Jell-O for dessert. Really not great. My school growing up had actually very good homemade food, and they had things like pizza and cinnamon rolls. So it wasn't in any way plant-based, but there were enough things that you could eat, and the meat ingredients were sort of a secondary item to the things I ate. But it was not an adventurous diet by any means. Yeah.
It's interesting. It sounds like we grew up really similarly. So I'm from upstate New York, and my dad is a big-time outdoorsman, hunter, fisherman. And I guess we were just the contrarians, right, who had to rebel against the
not
upbringing.
doing it.
But
I thought it was interesting that my parents had 3 kids. My brothers are vegetarians. They're not vegan, but they're vegetarian, and just was instinctive. And my father actually said when he was near the end of his life, which sadly was 23 years ago, 24 almost, he said he kind of regretted hunting. And
wow.
it was interesting. Kind of came to it later in life.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, we're 5 and there are two vegetarians. So I think you're onto something with a study needing to be done here.
Because every now and then I meet somebody who is the same. They're like, never wanted to eat it. Don't like it. Personally don't really like meat substitutes if they taste like meat. Like if they taste like grains or something, I like them. Or if I can think in my mind that it's something else. But if it really resembles meat, I don't like it. So I do think it's worth kind of investing some time in figuring out why that is.
So you grew up, eating meat and a lot of canned vegetables, you were saying. So when did the seed first get planted? When did you become interested in a plant-based diet?
Well, I always wanted to not eat meat. So when I remember my brothers became vegetarian when they went to college. They were 3 and 4 years older than I was. So I immediately was like, well, I am going to too. And I think I was 13. And my parents were like, you can't do that. They were very worried about my health, all the things. And so I kind of didn't say I was and technically wasn't. And then I remember being like 17 and having a sandwich that had pastrami on it or something, and I just remember being like midway through it and going, I don't have to do this anymore. Yeah. And it was the most liberating, powerful feeling. And sometimes I think about the fact that maybe my story isn't that helpful to people because it wasn't hard for me, really. It was a huge relief. At least meat, I think dairy, and that gets into a harder territory, which we can talk about. But for me, meat was easy. And I guess if I think about it, it's really just the connect of like, to me, it doesn't seem like food. It seems like an inedible substance. And, it's like if you said to me, you eat this countertop, I'd be like, that's not edible. And that's what meat, flesh, seemed like to me, an inedible substance. So that was like just a major relief. I know one of your questions is, did you ever have slip-ups? I never, ever, ever did, because unless it was accidental, unless it was like somebody put something in and I accidentally ate it and then, didn't know I'd eaten it. But yeah, for me, it was just really organic. Going to being a vegan was different, because I honestly, at the time, didn't even know that was a thing. It was 1976, 7. I didn't even know there were any people in the world who didn't eat, eggs and dairy. I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know why. And then for a long time, I was a very serious baker. And so I still am a pretty serious baker, but now everything I make is vegan. But at the time, it was such a part of what I made, and that took a long time for me to learn about that and change that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of us, regularly make choices that are out of line with our values just because we don't realize there's another way to do it. And so, you said your story might not be helpful, but I think it is to realize you can just have that light bulb moment where you realize that you do have a choice and what you've been taught isn't necessarily what you have to move forward with.
Yeah, and I think it was, it was really truly liberating to make that decision because, I grew up as indoctrinated into eating meat as you can possibly be. It was everywhere. It was the only thing on the menus at places. It was certainly served at my house 2 or 3 meals a day, and being and feeling like I didn't want to do it. So then just the immense relief of not ever having to do it again. Amazing. Amazing. And, I will say that those were the days when getting a meal out at a restaurant was not easy. You'd get it was the invention of the salad bar era, though. And so like all the steakhouses had a salad bar. And if you were really lucky, you'd get 3-bean salad.
Yes.
3-bean salad was like, oh, wow. And then you order a baked potato on the side and then put the 3-bean salad and the oil and vinegar on it. So good.
So you said it wasn't too difficult for you to make the transition because it wasn't something you were loving anyways. Were there any other unexpected challenges as far as, socially or kind of introducing this idea to your family?
Oh, certainly socially, certainly. I remember really well going to visit a relative, and I was just, maybe 19, 20. I don't remember why I was there. I went to visit some relatives on the East Coast. We were in Colorado, and my aunt had gotten a recipe that she had heard I'd liked, which was chicken or something in some mushroom gravy or something. She'd made this for dinner. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, but I don't eat that anymore. I'm a vegetarian. And my uncle like chewed me out, like really got mad at me. How rude are you? And, you know, I did learn at that young age that you need to warn people in advance when you're going to see them. But, you know, it wasn't really not on my mind at the time. You know, I was a young person. I wasn't really thinking about it. But I got really, really chewed out from that uncle. And, you know, I think that was kind of there was a lot of that attitude, like that you were being rude, you know, that you were rude, that you wouldn't eat what you were served. And really just dismissive, you know. I think, you know, at the time, I certainly became a vegetarian originally because of animals. I did not want to eat animals. But in 1975-ish, I read Diet for a Small Planet. And I knew right then that about the impact of it's so funny because now we talked about the climate crisis, but we just called it the environment back then, you know. I learned about what animal agriculture was doing to the planet very young, you know, so that was always part of my larger story. And then my mother died of a heart attack at age 57 suddenly and had a lot of heart disease in her family. And so I always say, like, I have the trifecta of reasons, you know, for health, for the planet, for animals, you know, those are all important reasons. And in my family, heart disease is extremely prevalent. And so my diet has to be quite scrupulous. I have to be scrupulous with my diet, which is why being fully plant-based is not only better for animals and the planet, but certainly for my health. But yeah, I mean, you know, you were kind of an outcast, you know, but you know what? I never had a problem with it. I think this is a personality type, I suppose, but I never, ever did not have conviction about it. I always believed in it. I mean, in my case, you know, my mother died suddenly of a heart attack, very severe issues in my family. So that's a big motivator. But I do think in many ways, the ethical reasons are more powerful, because there's nothing stronger than an idea. You know, you can shortchange yourself and go like, oh, I'm going to eat this unhealthy food, you know, whatever that might be, whether it's just French fries, you know. But when you really believe something, you know, and you really have a really ethical reason for it, and that can also be the planet and climate crisis, but especially if you really do take in the animal suffering, I do think that's maybe the easiest one, if there's an easy, right? Because it's a belief. I mean, I guess for me, in a way, it's probably the closest thing I have to a religion, you know, which is caring about all living creatures.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Is there anything that you've learned about animal agriculture over the years that's really shocked you?
Wow, everything about animal agriculture shocked me. You know, it's funny, when my kids were little, we went to the county fair a lot, and funnily, they would have things in the farm animal section that were supposed to be educational and whatever, but they were quite shocking. You know, they would show a cow, and they would show how much a cow has to eat to make milk, you know, how much a cow has to eat to get protein from the cow, you know. And I remember looking at the county fair thinking, wow, are they thinking really about what they're showing children? Like, if anyone stopped to read it, it was horrifying. You know, of course, animal agriculture has the cruelty element, which we could talk about separately, but on the environmental level, and again, we've known this for decades. So, you know, Diet for a Small Planet, again, you know, you just kind of have to stop and think logically about it, I think. The massive amounts of our planet that are used for growing crops to feed cattle and for chickens and for animals, etc. The massive amounts of alfalfa in our own country that are being sold to China to feed cattle. You know, the Colorado River being drained for alfalfa for cattle. Like, I think that people just really don't have any idea, because the minute you hear it, you think, well, that makes no sense. Diet for a Small Planet, I remember a large focus of that was just the inefficiency of it, right? Mm-hmm. We could feed so many more people. We could do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's extremely inefficient. But then when you add the question of the climate crisis and the land, the water use, the methane, it's really it's all pretty shocking. I guess the main thing that shocks me about it is the power that the animal agriculture lobby wields, that we can know so much. We can see the evidence. We can see what's happening. And yet the animal agriculture lobbies are continuing to defeat the message, spread so much disinformation, sabotage so much progress. And that's really what's shocking, because I think, don't these people also live on this planet? And the same with fossil fuels, right? You can say the same thing. Don't these people also have children? Don't these people also, want their grandchildren to survive? I guess they don't. That's kind of the only answer. I'm like, I guess you don't actually care about your grandchildren.
Yeah, the cognitive dissonance that we're capable of is shocking.
Oh, cognitive dissonance is really at the heart of all of it, I'm sure, you all know this. Veganuary is such a huge messenger in this, but, the fact that the word vegan is like one of the most hated words in the English language, and the fact that if you're vegan for climate, health, or animals, if you say it's for animals, people dislike you more. That's crazy. But that can only be cognitive dissonance, right? Because everybody says they love animals. Everybody loves animals. And so that really bothers people when you're like, well, I don't eat them or anything from them. And that's really a cognitive dissonance problem, because that doesn't feel good, Mm-hmm. Somehow if you say it's for your health because your mother died of a heart attack, oh, okay, well, that's just you. That's not me. Or if you say it's for the planet, they're like, well, that's right. And listen, a big part of our messaging with Support and Feed is to try to eat more plant-based food, right? Start with one plant-based meal a day. Try to meet people where they are, because you need to help guide people to the understanding, and because shifting to one plant-based meal a day actually does make a difference. It is impactful in all of those areas. But you also have to just be aware that the cognitive dissonance factor is so strong that if you are not kind of gentle and easing and acceptance, you really get nowhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Support and Feed, it seems like Support and Feed is everywhere you look these days. Your org is just doing such incredible work. So tell us a little bit more about that project and how you got started.
Well, we started really at the start of the pandemic. We already kind of lived this way as a family. I became a vegan, 15 years ago or something, for all the reasons we've talked about, realizing that, first of all, animal agriculture in the form of dairy and eggs still causes tremendous, horrific suffering. And then also a major contributor to climate and to health, et cetera. So we were kind of living this way as a family. And then when my children entered the music industry, first of all, I was just quite shocked at, how non-sustainable it was and what a kind of obliviousness there was to it. It was such a high-pressured industry, and people were just kind of trying to get through, and so really started dedicating a lot of what I did to trying to move the needle on sustainability in all things, and certainly on having more plant-based food. And so we were really already doing this. And then Billie went on a tour in 2020, go back to 2020. And we were really excited about a lot of the sustainable measures we had, including all plant-based food. And then the tour got canceled, of course, and we came home. And then we just started thinking about all the people who would be hungry and need food. So we just wanted to feed people. And of course, we were going to make the food plant-based food for the planet, for the animals, for health, to support small businesses. But then we had stepped into the world of food insecurity and food inequity. And really, our eyes were open wide. And one of the things that really became the most apparent to us was how the systems we've set up to feed people in large quantities, either for food assistance or in large events, etc., we're just not taking advantage of the fact that we could do so much more with that meal. It's not just about food. It's not just about calories. It's about providing a beautiful, nourishing, healthy meal that is it feeds your soul as well as your body, and that it's a meal that is better for the planet, better for animals, and that we would purchase those meals from small local businesses to help them stay afloat. And so we started doing it that way. And then we realized, we could be much more impactful if we took our meals to community organizations that were doing the most amazing work and needed support for their families. And also were generally in food apartheids in areas of the city where they lacked access to nourishing food. And so that's when we realized we had this intersectional mission that wasn't really being addressed by large food organizations. That's when we became a nonprofit. We were fully volunteer for a year and a half, even after becoming a nonprofit.
Wow.
Yeah, really amazing. So many committed people. I mean, that's what made us grow so fast. We had so many amazing volunteers. At the same time, we were speaking on Instagram, et cetera, to, a large audience of Billie's fans, et cetera, who we always say like came for Billie, stayed for the planet. But we could talk about climate change and plant-based food and social justice and food equity, et cetera. So, and then we were able to, we grew very quickly to 4 cities right away within the first 6 months. And then during the 2022 tour of Billie's, we were able to expand because we went on tour with her at the Eco Action Village, which happens at all of her tours, which is the Reverb Reverb.org is the org that provides all the sustainability measures on the tour. And we became a part of the Eco Village, meeting fans, getting people to take our 1 plant-based meal a day for 30 days pledge, similar to Veganuary, and then feeding people in all the communities along the tour. And after that, we were able to establish consistent presence in 11 cities where we have regular weekly meal deliveries, and not just food, but we provide information and education about the health benefits, about the climatary impact of what we eat. We do that through things like lunch and learns or Zooms or cooking lessons, or we also do produce boxes with recipes. We do lots of plant-based products that we have access to as well. But again, with recipes, because, it's all about impact, right?
Yeah.
You can feed a person 1 meal, but if you can change the way that actually makes a difference, right? It actually makes a difference right there. They get a beautiful, respectful meal that's better for their health. But if you can add to that something which may change what they eat in the future, or what they may look for in the future, what they might require of an organization that feeds them in the future. If we start to educate people about the impact on climate, then that's where our larger impact obviously is. But the beautiful thing about Support and Feed is that we have these large missions, right? Which is advancing access to nourishing food, acceptance and demand for plant-based food in giant systems, including the arenas that sports teams and musicians play in, and stadiums and schools and all the large players. So we have these big missions of system change, but we also get the beautiful win almost every day of feeding people nourishing food and seeing their lives impacted, and sharing a cooking demonstration and sending people home with groceries. So I love it so much because the issues that we're all facing are very large and scary and urgent. But there's also a beautiful day-to-day grassroots, literally grassroots growing of impact that is so important.
Yeah. Wow, it's incredibly powerful.
Thank you. I feel very lucky to be a part of it. We have an incredible staff and incredible volunteers and incredible followers too. Young people are really, really tuned in to trying to make a difference. And that's really inspiring.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible too that you've been able to, utilize some of these large events and concerts to get people excited about plant-based. How did you strike a balance between imparting your values to your kids and letting them find their own compass when they were growing up?
Well, that's a good question. I think parents, are charged with their children's well-being on all fronts. And to me, that's a moral and ethical one as well as everything else, and teaching your children that being kind to people is important and, all those kind of general good values. But, I grew up never wanting to eat meat and was kind of made to eat meat, right? And I couldn't have imagined feeding my children meat, because why would I feed something that I am ethically and morally opposed to? And also, why take away their opportunity to be able to say they never, ever did it, right?
Yeah.
If they grew up and they turned whatever and they said, I want to do this, well, that would be on them. But I love the idea that my children can actually say, I never did that. I never did that. And it turned out that way, which is great. But I wish I could say that, because it's something I really don't like being a part of. I feel like it was a very easy decision. I will say that because my husband is also was a vegetarian, also became a vegan, it's easier. I certainly know mixed couples where one is and one isn't. And I kind of marvel because many of those couples I see err on the side of letting their kids eat meat. And I'm quite shocked, because if I was in a relationship with someone who did not at least value my very heavy philosophy to the point of, letting your kids follow it, I don't think I could handle that. But I know that in the norm is that I see is that the meat eater wins, which I think is pretty weird, frankly.
Do you have any tips for any of our listeners that are looking to raise their own plant-based children, or any challenges you met along the way?
That's a good question. Well, it's so much easier now. I think already it's easier. I think even the plant-based, because I was vegetarian before I was vegan, I think pizza is like the largest, it's fed to children almost every day, right? Everyone has pizza, and that's quite a challenge. Now there's so much great plant-based pizza, so I think that's a lot easier to sort of, have the accepted food. I think having good food, I'm a cook. That really, really helps. I cook all our food. I cooked it all the time. My kids loved it. That makes a huge difference. I would say, first of all, learn to cook.
Yeah.
I don't know how anybody functions without knowing how to cook. First of all, it's like one of the greatest joys in the world. But second of all, I don't like giving up that power. I like to control the bulk of what I eat, And so I think being a great cook really helps. Finding foods that your children genuinely love. Also, this is a general parenting tip, not just about plant-based food, but you want to be the house that everybody wants to come to. You want to be the fun house, lots of fun activities, crafts, fun things to do. And food is part of that, right? And having fun food and having exciting meals and your family all sitting together and all the friends experiencing that. I think that really, really helps. Your kids sort of see like, oh, this is what my family does. And people like it. People appreciate it. So I think that's a big tip. And obviously, if you're fully plant-based, there's a lot of resources. My friend Reshma Shah has a book called Nourish, which I highly recommend. You definitely do need to worry about your vitamins, etc. True for all people, really. But certainly if you're plant-based, you do need to look at that. But it's quite simple if you just do it. So I recommend her book, Nourish, which I think is wonderful. And then just, let your kids, lead with the fun of food. I think food is quite fun. And obviously there's kids with, eating challenges in general. Kids can be very selective eaters, but fortunately my children loved broccoli, and that was like, so like, they were not adventurous eaters, but they loved broccoli, and I feel like broccoli got us through a lot.
Hey, that's a win.
Yeah, it is a win.
What's one of your favorite meals to cook?
Well, my kids love peanut noodles, sesame peanut noodles when I make that. I think I make soup probably more than anything. I happen to love soup, and you can turn almost anything into soup. So making soups of all kinds is something I love to make. My holiday dinner is a family favorite, which is tofu and mushroom gravy and Irish mashed potatoes, which mashed potatoes with leeks and cabbage. A traditional plant-based version of stuffing. And I love that whole meal. We make tamales on Christmas Eve. I make a lot of yellow curry. Because what I learned when my children were little, you could have people over and be like, oh, should we order food? Should we order Thai food? And first of all, we were really on a budget. And second of all, by the time you order it and you get it, I could make a giant pot of yellow curry that quickly. So yellow curry is something I make a lot.
Yeah. And we're back to the potatoes and tofu now with the yellow curry, right?
Exactly. You can't go wrong with potatoes and tofu. The two major food groups. I'm very glad that potatoes have recently been unvilified. I'm very happy about that. I feel like potatoes were vilified for many years, and now people realize how incredibly healthy they are and how good for you. I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, team potato, always.
Team potato.
So let's say you don't feel like cooking. Do you have a favorite place to eat out?
I have several. I go to a place called Kitchen Mouse all the time because it's right in my neighborhood, and they have amazing food, breakfast and lunch, and they've added a beautiful dinner. So I eat there a lot. Crossroads, of course, is a well-known restaurant in LA, and so good. Hey Sunshine Cafe is a favorite for lunch. In New York, I have had the pleasure of eating at 11 Madison Park, which is kind of a bucket list place. I think if you ever get the chance to go, it is an incredible experience. There's so many great plant-based restaurants around the world. We're so lucky now.
Yeah, we really are very, very spoiled in a lot of places. Yeah,
we are. Although, they're also having a lot of challenges, plant-based restaurants now. And, that's kind of alarming, I think the restaurant industry in general, but plant-based restaurants certainly are part of that struggle.
Yeah, definitely. They haven't been immune to the, economic challenges and the COVID supply chain challenges.
For sure. Exactly.
Seen a lot of great restaurants struggle the last few years. So we got to keep supporting them.
Yeah, keep supporting. And that's the hard part because I do cook a lot, but I do also try to support restaurants. So, got to strike a balance.
Sure. Do you have a food vice, an indulgent treat that you just can't resist?
Well, there are these turtles from Lagusta's Luscious.
Oh, love her.
Yeah, those turtles are so unbelievable. And I will say that I have gifted a lot of those turtles, and I've never met a person who didn't go like, this is like the most amazing thing I've ever eaten. So those turtles are a bit of I try not to keep them around. But then I think on a more plebeian level, like I was thinking, a marshmallow treat made with dandies, because, for years there weren't vegan marshmallows. And so I didn't have those for a very long time. I think, honestly, some of the newer plant-based options, plant-based yogurt, amazing.
Yeah.
Plant-based marshmallows, amazing. Because if you're an OG, there were many, many years where you didn't have that, And so to have it again is kind of amazing. Yogurt was like the one food I missed.
Do you have a go-to vegan yogurt brand that you like?
I have several. I love Forager. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love Coco June. I love the Siggy's plant-based option as well. They have a plant-based version. But Coco June is excellent for baking and for many other things. Forager is, I think, in some ways reminds me the most of dairy yogurts, if I can remember that far back. But there's a lot of great plant-based yogurt. I like the Find company. That's a really interesting one made from mycelium or fungus or something. Yeah, I love the inventiveness in food. I think that it's going to take a lot of solutions to deal with the climate crisis. And our food systems are really in danger because of the climate crisis. And I really like the innovation that's happening. I don't think anybody can be a purist as far as one solution, as far as local food is important, but it's not the only story. I love the idea of school gardens and more localized urban farming. Amazing. But we do need innovation. And I think it's really exciting what's happening in the innovation space. You know, even like chocolate. Chocolate is a very not sustainable product. Has a lot of dark sides to it as well. And I recently had like a cultured created chocolate. I think that is very important. You can tick a lot of people off with this, but I think we have to be very careful about limiting our food innovation. We have a small planet and we're in an urgent situation. And also, there's all kinds of things that have been invented throughout history that have saved lives, you know, vaccines and medicines and surgeries and innovations in all fronts. And in our food, you know, Brussels sprouts is a perfect example. You know, Brussels sprouts taste good now. They did not used to when I was a child. They did not taste good. You know, they've been cultivated to taste better. And I think food innovation is maligned a lot of times, but it's very, very important if we are to survive on our planet. And
Absolutely.
Also to end suffering. The chocolate industry has a lot of suffering involved in it. Of course, animal agriculture does, but innovation can end that suffering.
Yeah, I think supporting, you know, institutional corporate level interventions and also doing the work at the community and the grassroots level is so important. We just have to be kind of fighting on all fronts at this point.
Oh, exactly. We are all on the same team, and we have to remember that. I think sometimes that there is a problem in the plant-based food world. The animal agriculture industry has been very united. Like you don't see, I couldn't even name you a dairy milk brand probably because all the commercials are just milk in general, right? That they've been very smart. The animal agriculture industry has been genius. And the plant-based food industry, not as much. I get very irritated when I see something, and I do often, which is an advertisement for a plant-based product, and what they're doing is trashing other plant-based products. Not helpful, not good, right? It's really not good to be like, oh, well, this cheese is made with something, and this plant-based cheese is made with coconut oil. That's really bad for you, but our cheese is perfect. It's like, hey, there's room for all of you.
Yeah.
It's not helping anybody to tear each other down.
Yeah, we need a plant-based lobby to do some of this.
Yeah, I think there are some plant-based, there's a plant-based food association, et cetera. But yeah, we need a plant-based lobby, but it's a daunting task.
Well, Maggie, where can people follow you and learn more about your work and support and feed?
They can follow me on Instagram at Maggie M. Baird. I do a lot of conversations like this with a lot of exciting people. And of course, Support and Feed is on Instagram, TikTok, and supportandfeed.org. And I invite everyone to take the plant-based pledge to eat at least one fully plant-based meal a day. And like Veganuary, we have great resources to share with people and help people on their journey. Love Veganuary. I think it's an amazing concept, and I love that you work all year and in so many different ways. So great what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Huge thanks to Maggie for joining us and sharing her story.
Yeah, well done, Wendy. That was great. Listen, right, I've got a quiz for you. You ready? I'm looking for you to answer true or false as quickly as possible. So, red cabbage can glow in the dark. True or false?
False.
It's true, apparently. Carrots were originally black and only became orange in the 17th century.
True.
It's false. It was a bit of a trick question, that one, because they were actually originally purple, yellow, red, or white. I think they changed them to somehow changed them to orange because of William of Orange.
Really?
I don't know. In medieval Europe, eggplant or aubergine was called the mad apple.
True.
It's true, yeah. Cucumbers are 80% water.
True.
It's false. They're actually 95% water.
Wow.
Popeye originally ate cans of artichoke hearts. It was changed to spinach later.
False.
Yeah, that's false. Good. Well, that was our quiz, and that about wraps up our episode. So, Wendy, how can people contact us if they want to?
You can write us at podcast@veganuary.com. Please get in touch, share your stories, share your favorite vegans. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can find Veganuary on all major social channels.
And what if people want to take part and try eating plant-based for a month?
You're going to want to head over to veganuary.com and click the big red Take Part button on the top right corner. And then you'll opt in to receive 31 days of emails with tips and recipes and all kinds of fun stuff to make eating vegan fun and easy. All we ask from you is your name, country, and email address. Otherwise, it's completely free.
Absolutely. Great. This podcast was recorded at Distorted Podcast Studios and produced by Jim Moore at Bloody Vegan Productions. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and why not rate us 5 stars. Thanks for listening.
1, 2